alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear sisters. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Selma. I'm a mom of six, a simplicity parenting coach, a former midwife, a homeschooler, and here we talk about all things related to raising healthy Muslim families and being moms. I've been thinking these last few days as I'm working on getting ready the Mommy Mondays community that will be opening soon, inshallah, in a couple days. I've been thinking, what is so hard about motherhood? Why are we struggling so much? Or, what's the deal here? What's the problem? What's the pain point, right? And I've been thinking about my own journey. I became a mom quite young when I was 20 years old, alhamdulillah, and I set out with this vision. I wanted to have a large family. I wanted to be a practicing Muslim. I wasn't born into a practicing family, so when I adopted the Islamic lifestyle, I really wanted to do it by the book, so to speak, right? Like I wanted to do things properly. I wanted to have a spiritual connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I wanted to raise my family for the sake of Allah. I wanted to cultivate an Islamic atmosphere. I read all the books, all the articles, listened to all the lectures. Back in the day, it wasn't podcasts, but it was, CDs and lectures and things like that. And, I was trying to seek Islamic knowledge along with my spouse and all these kind of things. But then I kind of realized that I wasn't doing as well as I thought I should be doing, right? And I realized that the journey is quite lonely. Number one, in the 2000s, or like now 2025, not many people set out to have large families. Not many people want to get married in the first place, right? We have a crisis of marriage and family life and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of felt very lonely. I didn't think many people had the same goals like I did, right? To prioritize family life, to prioritize being a mom, especially when you're young, when you're in your 20s. Even in the Muslim community, there is that big push to prioritize education and career and these kind of things, right? And so we kind of set out to do it the opposite way, right? Like we were both quite young and we were trying to raise our family and have kids and stuff like that, and it just felt I wasn't very adequate at it, right? Like I didn't grow up with role models, not in a Muslim sense, right? So maybe some of you grew up, within a large Muslim family of loving people around you who taught you Islamic principles from a young age, or you grew up in a Muslim society. But I kind of had the opposite, right? And I think a lot of you might be in the same boat where you're quite kind of feeling lonely with your values, that you're feeling lonely with no role models, right? Who are you going to look up to in terms of, how do I get this done practically, right? And so soon I started, to encounter challenges. I'd be tired, or I didn't have the energy I thought I would, right? I didn't realize that child raising was so hands-on, right? When you don't sleep much, when you have young children who are constantly waking up, I didn't realize how physically exhausting it would be, right? I also didn't realize how emotionally and mentally exhausting it would be. It's kind of mind-numbing to take care of little children, right? Like you kind of go in, day out, the same routines. And I thought I'd be this patient mother. I thought I'd have this, Islamic vibe around my household, but it was much harder to do in my daily life. And, and I kind of felt like, okay, this must be only me. But because, I'm a big extrovert and I like to be part of the community, I started reaching out to other moms and I started speaking to them and I started sharing my struggles. And it turned out that a lot of people were struggling. It's just they were not talking about it, or they didn't feel like, this was a problem. They thought, well, it's just hard. It is what it is, and you just suck it up, and that's it. And I kind of wanted more. I wanted to thrive as a mom. I wanted to achieve so many goals. I wanted to do so many things, right? I remember one of the days, I think, around the time when I first started the parenting support group 17 years ago, I had 3 kids. My oldest was barely 6. I had a 3-year-old and 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and a newborn. And I felt like I wanted to do more of that. I wanted to stay home with them. I wanted to homeschool them. I wanted to do all these things, but I didn't have the tools. Like I was trying to read books. I was trying to take courses. And it was just kind of this mix of feeling unfulfilled of being at home, but also of wanting to do more and not knowing how, and trying to figure out how do I set up systems and ways to handle this better. I didn't want to resent being home. I wanted to be happy with the kids, right? But then I realized I would be losing my patience. I was snapping at them. And then, here's me is listening to Islamic lectures, but then I can't handle a 3-year-old. So there was a disconnect, definitely, right? And so I started, trying to figure out where is the problem, right? Like, what's the issue? Why can't we get it done? And a lot of times it was lack of communication with other people, right? That I wasn't expressing what I needed or wanted at the time, avoiding conflict, not trying to be difficult, right? Learning to speak up for myself. At the same time, learning skills on actually what to do with the kids, right? Because it didn't quite come naturally to me. I didn't grow up with younger siblings. I didn't grow up around kids. So having my own kids was quite challenging in that sense. Like, I had to figure out, okay, what does a 3-year-old need? Or what's an appropriate thing to be learning for the 6-year-old? And, how do I manage all this with a newborn, right? And so adding each child had its own challenges, right? And so we had this idea of having a large family and adding one child at a time, subhanAllah. But it had its different seasons, right? And its different challenges. And all at the same time, the people around us were kind of saying, okay, hey, you have your hands full. That's a lot. Oh, how are you managing this? This must be this. Or there was a lot of judgment around people, And so I think when you embark upon this path, less traveled, right? There are challenges that are difficult to share. So the fact that I chose to homeschool, for example, didn't mean that I'm some super mom or that I'm never exhausted or that I don't have any challenges. But a lot of people would be then, if I would share my struggles, they would just kind of say, well, put the kids in school, like, then you'll be fine. And I didn't want to admit defeat, so to speak, right? I still had my goals. I still had my values. I still had my lofty ideas of what I wanted to achieve, what kind of sadaqah jariyah I would like to leave behind. And so this is kind of the place I was, and what prompted me to start working with mothers, right? Because I wanted to do better. I wanted to achieve all these goals, and I didn't want to lose myself in the process, right? Like, I didn't want to, because motherhood is so all consuming, right? Like, from the physical, from the mental, from the spiritual, from being around kids 24/7, right? It's very easy to lose yourself, and if you don't have the support, it's easy to get into conflicts with your spouse. It's easy to snap at the kids and to feel bad about yourself at the end of the day, because that's not what you set out to do, right? And that shame and that internal feeling of like, oh, I screwed up again, like, how do I move forward? And a lot of stuff came up over the years, right? My own childhood, the way I was brought up, my kids talking back, or like, how do we handle discipline, and how do we let them learn, and where do we draw the line, what's the boundary, right? There were so many issues, and I felt like so many mothers were just kind of doing motherhood totally unprepared, right? I almost felt like, okay, there should be more guidance about this, right? Like, we should be getting more support, right? And so this was the reason why I started the parenting support group back in Canada when I had 3 kids. And then when I moved to Saudi Arabia, I continued doing the parenting group because I really needed that support. I was in a new country. I didn't know what to do, and I was lonely. And now my kids were starting to do hifz, and we were homeschoolers, and we had different challenges, right? And I was a mom of now like 5 children. I had been at this for a while. And so even the shift in the parenting group was different, right? Like, we started talking about self-care and boundaries. We started talking about like, hey, how do we make time for ourselves? Because there was a bunch of older moms, right, at this point. Potty training was not a thing anymore. Like, we knew how to potty train and breastfeed, but now it was more like, okay, how do we keep going? How do we not lose ourselves in the process, right? And I learned so much from the other moms. I learned so much from their experiences. And the fact that they were sharing their struggles made me feel less alone. Like, it wasn't just a me problem. Turns out there was systematic issues, right? There was issues across the board. The society is not really built for mothers anymore, right? Everybody's asking you, well, what are you doing? Okay, you're just a mom, right? And these kind of things. So running the parenting group has been a lifeline, for me as a mother, right? Like, that was something that I really enjoyed, and it helped me kind of figure things out. It pushed me to share what I've learned. It allowed me to learn from other moms. It led to lifelong friendships, right? Sisters that I still keep in touch with to this day. Some sisters who went on to have multiple children, way more than me. Sisters who have been homeschooling, sisters who had kids in school, but, were really dedicated mothers, hands-on mothers, interested in building healthy families, being active in the dawah field, like really an amazing community of moms wherever I went, in whichever country. The parenting support group allowed me to meet these exceptional women, right? And so this is part of why I decided to come back to YouTube, over the years I've kind of had my ideas and attempts, but part of that was seeing this discourse online of, men versus women, and just this new generation of moms, who are now bombarded with even more expectations, right? And just kind of having this I wanted to have a space where moms could actually learn, and where they could connect with each other, and where they could benefit, and where it would be a realistic representation of motherhood feels like, right? And I felt a lot of years like, okay, well, who am I to bring anything to the table? Like, who am I to share? There are other people out there. But I've been doing this for a really long time right now, and I feel like, maybe I'm not the expert in the field, but at least maybe I'm a couple of steps ahead of you, right? When I was having 3 kids, I would look up to the moms that were older than me, and, how are they handling the teenage years? What are the steps they're taking to build the families, that they want? And so I want to bring people together that have the same goals. I want to bring people together that don't want to lower their standards as far as Islamic teachings and Islamic practice, but also who are trying to treat their kids with respect and love and care, right? Because I thought there was a big disconnect in the Muslim community as well. I thought the practicing circles were kind of really harsh towards the kids, or I thought our encounters, for example, with the Quran schools and, hifz classes, there was a lot of moms that were quite harsh on their kids, in terms of memorization. And I didn't want that. Like, I didn't want to hit my children if they didn't memorize a page, right? I didn't want to formula feed my kids, or just so I could fast Ramadan. I didn't have to breastfeed and these kind of things. Like, I wanted to find people aligned to my philosophy about child rearing, right? And then in the secular spaces, I stood out like a sore thumb, right? In the secular spaces, where I was interested in gentle parenting and homeschooling and attachment parenting and all these kind of things, often I was the only Muslim around, right? And so it's just kind of, I wanted to create this community of people where practicing Muslim mothers would feel welcome, but also practicing Muslim mothers would kind of live their best lives, right? Like, not just be these exhausted and overwhelmed moms with a bunch of kids and just kind of like, barely surviving. I wanted to have a community of moms who are thriving, moms who are not losing themselves in the process of motherhood, right? And I wanted to add more children, so I started off with 1, 2, 3, and, things obviously got more difficult, but, we wanted to have this, this large family, build this community. And I wanted to encourage people in the path. Like, I didn't want people to just kind of say, oh, it's impossible nowadays, don't do it anymore, and I wanted to encourage people that healthy marriages are possible, that working on your marriage is possible, that communication is possible, that it doesn't have to be all bad, right? And so over the years, so many moms, would come to me, and then when I would start talking about a specific practice, and about how to teach your kids Quran, for example, or how to deal with siblings rivalry, or how, if there was a specific parenting topic, a lot of moms would come back to me and say, well, I'm exhausted. I don't have time to be all nice and gentle, and, I don't have time to sit there and teach the kids such and such, right? And then I realized it was an issue of boundaries. It was an issue of self-care. A lot of moms are burnt out. A lot of moms couldn't say no. They felt guilty, and particularly in the practicing Muslim circles, they felt like they wouldn't be a good Muslima if they said no to something, right? There was this expectation that they had to do it all, but then the kids or the moms themselves were getting the short end of the stick, right? And so, or their spiritual practice was suffering. Like we've seen in a lot of the comments, sisters are saying, hey, I set out to do this thing. Maybe I came even from a background of being involved in dawah, and I had these high standards, and all of a sudden I find myself like, I'm barely keeping up. I'm barely reading my Quran. I'm barely doing my salahs because I'm just so overwhelmed, and I'm just having this crisis of faith. I feel like I have low iman, and I'm just so tired, right? All these things we've seen in the last couple of videos I've done, and this mirrors my experience in the community, right? And so then there was a lack of guidance within marital affairs, like especially nowadays there's this whole men versus women, and what do women bring to the table, and what about men? And I feel like there is no dialogue where both sides are part of the team, where men and women are interested in building healthy families and raising their boys and their daughters right, their sons and their daughters. And so this is where kind of my work comes in. This is, where my experience of being with the moms, and this is something that I do in the daily. Anytime I connect with a mom, I try to listen, I try to hear what they're struggling, and it's across the board similar patterns, right? Of exhaustions, of feeling inadequate, of feeling guilty to say no, of having negative communication with those around them, with snapping and not being patient with the kids, feeling like they can't do it all, despite us wanting to do it all, right? And so here's where I come in, right? Here's where I come in. I come in with my experience of having done so. Half of my kids are grown now, alhamdulillah. Two of my boys are married, alhamdulillah. And so I feel like we've managed, alhamdulillah, with Allah's blessing and permission to reach our goals that we set out to do. And I want to share that. I want to share that within the community. I want to be sort of the sister that's kind of around to help you out as you make these decisions and as you kind of figure out how to do that. And part of that is the Mommy Monday community. I did individual coaching for a couple years back and forth, and uh, I actually really don't like it because it's just isolates the woman. Each sister thinks she's having the problem herself, and we might have an individual coaching call, and I walk her through the steps, and yet she still feels like she's the only one in the universe having this problem. And meanwhile, maybe I've talked to 10 sisters that week who actually have the same issues, right? And so my goal is to bring people together. My goal is to bring like-minded sisters together, to create an atmosphere where sisters can actually share, where sisters can be themselves, they can be real, an atmosphere with no gossip, no judging, because a lot of us feel like we can't even ask for help because our lifestyle will be judged because we are choosing the path less traveled, right? And so if you're, for example, choosing to homeschool and to teach Quran to your kids, there might be judgment from those around you who feel inadequate, who feel like you are judging them, right? And so they might be telling you, oh, you're too strict. Okay, what about this no screens thing? Okay, what about the healthy nutrition bit? What about when you have higher standards? A lot of people don't like that, right? They feel like you're judging them for whatever they're doing, right? And so it gets quite lonely, right? And so this is where sharing and coming together comes, and YouTube is great because, here's me sharing my knowledge, but there's very little dialogue back and forth, right? Like I want you guys to be able to share your concerns, and this is where Mommy Mondays come in. The community will be opening inshallah next week. I'm really, really excited. We have already started the platform in the back end with my former sisters, my former students, so to speak, the sisters who have participated in my living room. They have onboarded, they have joined the community online. So we're kind of tweaking the details and trying to figure things out. So the community will be opening inshallah next week. The card will be open. I will be posting another video next week inshallah, and if you're interested, please join the link down below for the waiting list so you're notified. Check your emails, please. Check your emails. No WhatsApp and no groups like that. Just check your email, join the waiting list. There will be a link to the card. It will be a paid membership because I do want to make it a little bit difficult, right? My experience has been that content is free, people don't really value it. Sisters don't really bother coming to the sessions. So there will be a membership because I want you to have some skin in the game. I want you to feel like, okay, I did this and I'm doing this for myself, right? The emphasis is on community. The emphasis is on coming together and sharing in a space where we can, help each other. You have access to me. We'll be doing live calls, inshallah. You will have access to the platform where you can share, ask questions and things like that. But the main part is the community and just kind of having that support. I found motherhood was kind of one of those things where you didn't really get feedback. Like a lot of things, you get immediate feedback. You go to school, you get a report card, if you're doing well or not. You go to work, you get your evaluation, right? But for motherhood, you don't know if you're doing well. And we tend to be critical and negative of ourselves, right? And so, I want us to kind of have that space where somebody can tell us, hey, you're doing a good job. Here, we're here for you. We got your back as moms, right? A part of that unknown is why I created the quiz as well. That's going to be in the description below. Just to kind of a little bit of an assessment of how you're doing as a mom and what are the points that you feel like, okay, I could use some improvement in that. So do the quiz, inshallah, get a little bit of a feedback. I kind of try to hit the main issues that I'm hearing from sisters that they're struggling with. And, that should give you an idea. what are the areas of your life that you can work on, and that's going to give me an idea what my audience is looking for. What are the ways I can help you guys in more detail, inshallah. So check out the links in the description below. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to the Mommy Mondays community. I will continue to post here on YouTube, just because this reaches a wider audience, and I know a lot of moms do not have the means maybe to pay for the membership, which is okay. I will still continue to show up here, and we'll continue to tackle topics that are of interest, topics regarding motherhood, topics regarding parenting, regarding siblings rivalry, regarding homeschooling, regarding all these things. The Mommy Monday community is just that. It's a community. You will have more access to me. So I'm hoping to see you there, but if not, I'll see you here on YouTube, inshallah. All right, take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.